Over the last year, it feels like, I was talking to Nick Carter about this yesterday. Every major event around the world that's been happening over the last year, 2 years, has a Bitcoin angle. Whether it's direct Bitcoin stories such as El Salvador, making Bitcoin legal tender because they are a dollarized nation, so they have no control over their sovereign currency, to COVID and people being locked down and understanding the control government have and the connection between that and money, to what's happening in a war zone right now where an army is being funded by unsensible money, another country is being cancelled, and there are certainly going to be Bitcoin considerations both for the state and the population of that country, to in Canada where the truckers were deplatformed from from GoFundMe. It feels like Bitcoin has now reached that weird tipping point where it's gone beyond just a suggestion of ideas or like these predictions about the future. Everything that people who wrote about years ago, people like Pierre Rochard and Nakamoto Institute and those people, it's all like happening now. And so you don't just learn about Bitcoin, you have to learn about all the asymmetric topics. And add to that, into that mix, you have got this broad set of people, a broad set of ideas that need considering. It's wild, man.
It's what every one of these islands of information that seem independent islands of information with their camps of people that are totally committed to that camp, and that feel like they're getting further and further apart from society, are further and further apart because of the misinformation and money. Misinformation and money must equal, and money is just an abstract concept for our time. So we don't want more money. We want more. We want more of what we believe money will buy us, whether that's love, freedom, vacation, whatever that is, or live a life of retirement. We want what we think money will buy us. It's just information. And so when you have misinformation and money as a byproduct, you must have misinformation broadly across society. And all of these camps that look disparate and are further and further divided all the time, and people are taking opinions inside the camp and fighting fellow man inside another camp, it's all because of that distortion in money. In fact, when I wrote my book, that's one of the reasons I wrote the us versus them chapter, because you could see it playing forward with what would naturally happen as a result of moving down this path, and what has happened throughout history. When you move down this path, when you get to this point in a cycle, what would naturally happen, and how that would corrupt our brains, and we would turn against each other instead of towards each other, because it felt easier to do. It's always easier to blame a societal problem on a person rather than a structure. And this is a structural problem. Okay,
let's expand into that.
If you think about what drove our learning, I could come at this a couple angles. I'll start here. The division of labor is critical in the growth of society. And what the division of labor essentially said is, before, when we were in a small group, 150 people, that group of 150 people living in the Sahara or living on the plains had to do everything together. Now that small group, you could have somebody hunt, you could have somebody stay, watch the kids and everything else, but it relied on each other, and everybody had their role. As you expand global trade, the only way to have everyone have their role is a division of labor. And the division of labor, so if you just think about the world we live in, which is just ideas, and when we predict the world we're living in from the world we're living in, and we can't see the new idea that changes our life. So, so what that means is, in a division of labor, for me to be a doctor, I had to trust somebody else was a farmer, and somebody else was a metal worker, somebody else was this. And if I couldn't trust that, and the only thing that glued all of that together was trust, right? Trust in that information of money. Because if I couldn't trust that, then I had to do everything myself. And so once you start distorting that division of labor, manipulating money, no matter where the distortion ends up, it has to keep on moving. Now, you could centralize all function and say, everybody here is at my control, right? That is one plausible way. You could say, those people are do everything I say because of coercion. You could centralize all functions and remove the free market. But if you do that, and all ideas are actually and we don't see new ideas until they're in front of us. Like we thought we'd use a BlackBerry forever until iPhone came out, right? We don't see the new idea until it's in front of us, and those changes happen slowly or fast, depending on how that idea magnifies across society. If we don't see that, then how could we trust a centralized authority to see every idea for us? So if you do that over time, then the centralized authority has to gain power effectively through control. It's a control function. So there's two ends of this spectrum, and you can see kind of communism on one side is a control function, and we believe that on a free market on the other side is kind of a governance structure to allow ideas to flow.
And under communism, that's a distortion of money.
Communism it's a different control. It's a control structure under a belief that we know better than all of you.
Yeah, but it distorts money because there's no incentive model.
Here's the important thing. We believe we live in a free market here.
Uh-huh.
If the thing that you don't vote on that matters most in your life is the distortion of money. You're voting on taxes, but most of the taxes is in a hidden you could call it a transfer of wealth and inflation, and nobody has a vote on it. And that underpins the free market. There is no free market. So these ideas, the communism and free market, collide, and they're both communism over time. And that sounds harsh, but it's a control structure. If there is no free market, if there's a distortion on money, because everything else is on top of that distortion of money. So
how do you have a truly free market?
You don't right now, and that's actually why Bitcoin is such an important innovation, or sort of discovery, and it's not well understood yet. It will be over time. It's just an idea, right? And if we all believe in a different idea, that we should live under control of somebody else, and that person should make all the decisions, then society is going to live under that. Then that's what it'll look like.
So to have a truly free market, we can only do it by eradicating any form of centralized taxation and redistribution.
Yeah, I want to be careful. To be careful there because and again, there's some people who believe that. There's some people in Bitcoin who believe that. There's some people that all governments will fail and it's all every man to itself. I don't believe that. I don't either. But I totally respect some that who do. And I want to listen to the opinion, but I don't think society can function without an agreement of laws that protect society, kind of for the greater good. Now, what that looks like this becomes complicated topic on the transition, because remember, if you look through the lens at what society looks like today, and you realize how unfair that is for most of society because of the manipulation of money, and how those most hurt by the manipulation of money can't see their way out because they're living in fear, and they run back to the same government that's creating it for more money and more manipulation. I know how that kind of builds centralization and further function, and then from that lens, I could totally see how somebody could be so against that they'll go almost fringe to burn it all down. It's almost like the Monopoly game board, right? If the game ends and you reset the game, but along the way on the game, if you get lucky and you land on the right properties and somebody else gets unlucky, the person that's lucky has a more and more greater and greater probabilities to win, and the other one gets greater and greater probabilities to lose. They go around the board. Now, what happens if at the end of that board game, or every time you pass go, the unlucky person that can't make it around the board game, and the game won't end. It won't be allowed to end. But instead of getting $200, they can't get around the board game, they get $300. And then all the prices of food and housing and everything else go up. And the richest get richer. And then they can't get around the board game again, and they go back and ask for $400. That's what UBI, that's what all of these things look like. And it's perpetual slavery.